Alright guys, I am back again with another deck profile from Cardfight Vanguard Dear Days on Nintendo Switch. This time we got version 1 of my Dragon Empire Eugene deck. Which of course version 1 is everything through the first additional card pass, so through the booster set 7. And this is a deck that initially I was actually on the fence about building this deck at all. But I'm actually really glad I did, because once I tried it out, I actually really ended up liking the way this deck plays. It focuses on retiring your opponent's rear guards, and then gaining various effects from those retirers, or from just your opponent having a certain number of open rear guard circles. So, as always, we will be going through the deck, and then we'll show it off in one card fight. So, starting first with our ride deck, of course we have our Grade 0 starter, which is Double Gun of Duststorm Bart. So when it's rode upon, if you want a second, draw a card. Standard D-Series starter. Next up, for the Grade 1, we have Gunning of Duststorm Nigel. So its auto ability, when this unit is rode upon by Cataclysmic Bullet of Duststorm Randor, you Soul Charge 1. So just a free Soul Charge when you ride over him. And then he has a second auto ability when he's on rearguard circle that says when your opponent's rearguard is retired during your main phase, you can counterblast one and retire this unit to choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it. So we're not running any copies of him in the main deck, and he never really ends up on rearguard circle, so that second skill really isn't used for anything ever. Next up, for the Grade 2, we have, of course, Cataclysmic Bullet of Duststorm Randor. So his auto ability, when this unit is rode upon by Heavy Artillery of Duststorm Eugene, you draw a card and choose up to one card from your drop and put into your soul. So very useful card when you ride over top of him. You get a free draw and a free soul. And then he has a second auto ability when he's on Vanguard or rearguard circle that says when this unit attacks, if your opponent has 2 or less rearguards, you can counterblast one to Soul Charge 1, and this unit gets power plus 5,000 until end of that battle. So again, another Soul Charge ability. We do Soul Blast quite a bit in this deck, so that extra resource is helpful. And he also gains a little power gain too. So pretty useful ability. And then of course our Grade 3 is Heavy Artillery of Duststorm Eugene. So he has 2 different activate abilities, first of which says once per turn, you can rest 2 of your rearguards to choose one of your opponent's rearguards, retire it, and this unit gets power plus 10,000 until end of turn. So very simple retire ability, letting you take out one of your opponent's units and gain power just by resting 2 of your units, which we have several cards in this deck that can actually help mitigate that cost even further. And then he has his second ability that says once per turn, if your opponent's rearguard was retired this turn, you can Soul Blast 5 to look at the same number of cards on the top of your deck as the number of your opponent's open rearguard circles. Choose any number of unit cards from among them, call them to rearguard circle, and put the rest into your soul. So this is a very Gold Paladin-esque top deck superior call skill. You can potentially look at the top 5 of your deck if you've wiped out all your opponent's rearguards, and call any number from that top 5. So while this ability does have a steep cost, it is a potential plus 5 to your board, which most of the time you're not going to call all 5. Most of the time all 5 won't be cards you want to call to rearguard. But it is very useful in filling in your field and getting your combo pieces that you may need. You could even potentially use this skill to call over top of the units that you rested with his first ability, if you really need to. And then of course any of the ones that you look at and you don't call go into your soul, so it does help recover some of that cost a little bit to potentially use this skill again. However, most of the time I do try to not use this skill more than once per game, if I can help it, since this deck has a massive amount of draw power, and between that and then this card, or this ability taking potentially 5 cards out of your deck, deck out becomes a real possibility with this deck. so you don't really want to spam that too much. But it can be useful in the right situation. So that is our ride deck. Moving on to the main deck. First off, for the grade 3s, we do have our 3 additional copies of Eugene, SP, of course, who is just here for Persona ride purposes. Next up, we have 3 copies of Strike Cannon of Duststorm Andrea. So her activate ability says if you have a Vanguard with Eugene in its card name, you can retire this unit to choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. So this card combos very well with Eugene's first skill. Basically, you can just call her and then rest her to pay Eugene's cost, take out one of their rear guards, and then since she's already rested and can't do anything, you can just retire her to pick off another rear guard, and then call something new to replace her. So, very helpful skill in helping, extend your combos and pick apart your opponent's board. Also, she has very nice artwork. So then lastly for our grade 3s, we have 4 copies of the normal order, Best Harvest. So there's no cost to play this card, and it lets you choose one of your Vanguards, and until end of turn, it gains an auto ability that says when your opponent's rear guard is retired during your main phase, you draw a card. So this card is the main draw engine of the deck. Absolutely fantastic skill, letting you draw a card each time you retire one of your opponent's units during your main phase. So Eugene's skill will get you a draw, Andrea's skill will get you a draw, all the other rear guards we have in this deck that lets you retire stuff will give you a draw. This card can potentially be up to a +4 per turn, actually. If your opponent has a full field and you manage to wipe out their entire board, you'll get 5 draws off of that. So, insanely good card in helping you just draw through your deck and maintain your card advantage. The only problem with it is it does rely on your opponent actually calling out a board for you to retire in order to gain those draws. But most of the time, that is going to be the case. So, very helpful card. So, that is all of our grade 3s. Moving on to the grade 2s. First off, we got 2 copies of Twin Bullet of Duststorm, Travis. So, he has an activate ability that says once per turn, if your opponent's rear guard was retired this turn, you can counterblast one to soul charge one, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it, and this unit gets power plus 10,000 until end of turn. So, very good skill for the cost of just 1 counterblast. You can gain a soul, a retire, and plus 10k power. Of course, this is another skill that will trigger Best Harvest, since it is activate ability. Now, it does require one of your opponent's rear guards to have already been retired this turn, but most of the time you can just do that off of Eugene's skill. We have many retire skills in this deck. So, this card is just a good extender to use after you already used one of those other abilities. So, next up, we have 1 copy of Howitzer of Duststorm, Dustin. So, he has an auto ability that says when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, if your Vanguard is Heavy Artillery of Duststorm, Eugene, you put a card from your hand into your soul to draw a card and choose one of your opponent's grade 2 or greater rear guards and retire it. So, yet another retire skill. It does let you cycle by putting a card into your soul and then drawing. So, you can gain a soul and a retire from this ability. And then he has a second auto ability that says when this unit attacks, you can Soul Blast 1, and this unit gets power plus 2,000 until end of that battle for each of your opponent's open rearguard circles. So again, if you cleared out their whole board, that can potentially be a plus 10k to him. So that does help with him being a 20k beat stick, helping your offense out as well. So next we have 3 copies of Strong Fortress Dragon Gibra Brachio. So he has an activate ability that says if your Vanguard is Heavy Artillery of Duststorm Eugene, you can Soul Blast one and rest this unit to choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. Then he also has his auto ability that says at the beginning of your battle phase, if your opponent has 1 or less rear guards, You stay in this unit, and this unit gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn. So this card is basically just another retire ability. You can rest him to retire, and then restand him with his second ability as soon as your battle phase starts, and he gains a power boost as well. So very useful card. You do have to make sure that your opponent has one or less rear guards by the time your battle phase gets here in order to restand him. But most of the time that will not be a problem with all the retire power that this deck has. So next up, we have 2 copies of Meteor Flare Dragon. So his auto ability, when this unit is placed on rearguard circle until end of turn, all of your opponent's rearguards lose all of their continuous abilities and cannot gain them. And then you can counterblast 1 and choose one of your opponent's rearguards in the same column as this unit and retire it. So this card is here to get around any cards your opponent might have that have those, this unit cannot be chosen abilities. You just call him, and it negates all those abilities, so, your Fosados of the world, or your Trick Stars, or what have you. Those units will now be able to be targeted by your various retiring skills, including his own, that lets you retire another unit in his same column. And then additionally, he has a continuous ability that says during your turn, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, and they have no rear guards, this unit gets power plus 10,000. So again, another power-up skill, turning him into yet another 20k beat stick for your offensive pushes. So then lastly for our grade 2s, we just have 1 copy of the Blitz Order Ambush Kill Smoke. So you can play this with a Counterblast 1, and it says that if your Vanguard is Heavy Artillery of Duststorm Eugene, you can choose one of your Vanguards and it gets power plus 10,000 until end of that battle. And at the end of that battle, you choose one of the rearguards that boosted for that battle and retire it. So this is a pretty cool Blitz Order. Lets you actually get a retire during your opponent's battle phase, which can be particularly useful against any decks that can potentially restand a full column, like Bastion or something, for example. You can take out that booster and potentially weaken their second rearguard attack as well. But otherwise, it is just another retire and a 10k shield. So overall, pretty useful card. So that's all the grade 2s. Moving on to the grade 1s. First off, we have 3 copies of Assault Bullet of Duststorm Oswald. So he has an auto ability that says at the end of the battle, this unit boosted a Vanguard with Eugene in its card name. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater and they have no rear guards, you can Counterblast 1 and discard a card from hand to choose one of your Vanguards, stand it, and increase or decrease its critical and drive to 1 until end of turn. So this is a very useful ability, letting you restand your Vanguard and gain a 4th attack. It does require your opponent to be at grade 3 and for them to have no rear guards, so it does require a little bit of setup. But, like I said, it gives you your 4th attack and an extra drive check, only 1, since it does reduce your Vanguard's drive and critical to 1. So if you pulled a crit trigger on his first attack and gave it to your Vanguard, then he'll lose that crit for a second attack. But still very helpful in terms of your offense. Doesn't help any in terms of card advantage, since it is a ±0, since you have to discard and you only get 1 drive. But still very, very useful card. Initially, I was actually running this card at 4. I wound up dropping it to 3 so I could put in another copy of Andrea. But you shouldn't really have any problems getting this card by the time you need it. Between the massive amount of draw power you can get off of Best Harvest, plus Eugene's skill letting you potentially dig for pieces as well, you shouldn't really have any issues finding him. Of course, he is only useful in that back row center rearguard circle anyway, so you really only need the 1 copy. So, I don't really think you need him at 4. If you want to run him at 4, you could drop something else and bump him up, but it's really just player preference. So, next up, we have 4 copies of Strong Sharp Dragon Gaze Fort. So he has an auto ability when he's on back row rearguard circle. that says once per turn, when your opponent's rear guard is retired during your turn, you stand this unit and it gets power plus 2,000 until end of turn. So this card is the other very good target to pay the cost for Eugene's skill. You can rest him to get a retire, which will trigger his ability, letting you stand him right back up and have a 2k power gain as well. So very useful card. If you do get 2 copies of this out onto your board, it basically makes Eugene's retire skill free. So yeah, very helpful to have. A lot of times I like having 1 copy of him and 1 copy of Andrea in order to combo and get 2 retires out of it. But either way, it is a very, very useful card to have out on your board. So the only other grade 1s we have are our Sentinels. So of course we have our 3 copies of Twin Buckler Dragon, just your standard Perfect Guard. And of course 1 copy of the Blitzorder Elementaria Sanctitude, which of course you can play without paying the cost if your opponent's Vanguard has triple drive. So that is all of our grade 1s. Moving on to the grade 0s, we just have our trigger lineup, which is 8 crit, 3 front, 4 heal, and 1 over. So starting first with the crit triggers, we have 4 copies of Conduct Spark Dragon, just your vanilla crit. Additionally, we have 4 copies of Burning Flail Dragon. So crit with a skill at the end of the battle it boosted, you can put it into your soul, choose one of your units, and it gets power plus 2,000 until end of turn. So just another way to get that extra soul if you really need it for one of our various soul blasting costs. Next up, for the fronts, we have 3 copies of Blaze Maiden Parama. Front with a skill. If your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, gets shield plus 5,000. So 20k shield front trigger. And then for our heals, we have 4 copies of White Light Dragon Parasolus. So just the vanilla heal. Of course, you can run the effect ones if you feel like it. And then lastly, we have our over trigger, which is Dragon Deity King of Resurgence, Dragveda. So his additional effect lets you choose one of your Vanguards and stand it. So as always, very useful skill, letting you stand your Vanguard. One thing to point out that this skill can actually conflict with Oswald to an extent. If you check this on Eugene's first attack, when you boosted him with Oswald, you'll already restand it off of this skill, and then you won't be able to use Oswald's ability that turn. The only way you could actually use these skills together is if you get lucky and attack with Eugene boosted by Oswald, use Oswald's skill to restand Eugene, and then check this card on Eugene's second attack with his 1 drive check. Then you could potentially get 3 Vanguard attacks in 1 turn. However, other than that, the only way to do it would be to attack with Eugene not boosted and hope and pray you get this, and then boost him on his second attack, which obviously is not going to be a good play most of the time. So yeah, you might want to keep that in mind when you have Oswald boosting your Vanguard. But that is the deck. So we will go ahead and have our 1 fight with it. And we'll fight Gosetsu. And we will be going second.
Stand up, Vanguard. Stand and draw. Ride. Turn end. Ore no turn da. Draw.
Alright, so we'll discard that crit to ride. Use Bart's skill to draw. And then we'll just go ahead and attack.
Vanguard ni attack. Drive check. Heal trigger.
Gonna get a heal trigger that is wasted.
Damage check. Draw trigger.
He gets a draw trigger.
ターンエンド俺のターンドローライドスキル発動ステリオルコールヴァンガードにアタック
And we'll let that through.
ノーガードだドライブチェックドロートリガー
He gets another draw trigger.
ダメージチェックヴァンガードにアタックだ
And we'll guard that one.
ガードターンエンドスタンドアンドドロー
Alright, so let's see. We'll drop Dustin, I guess,
ライ
to ride Randor.
ドスキル発動
And then Nigel's skill lets us soul charge our over trigger. Unfortunately. So I think I'll just go ahead and attack.
ヴァンガードにアタック
And he's only got one rear guard, so Randor's skill lets us soul charge again. And gain
パワ
5k.
ープラスノーガードだドライブチェックよしクリティカルトリガーだ
And we get a crit trigger.
クリティカルプラスパワー
So that should put him to 3.
ダメージチェッククリティカルトリガーだ
He gets a crit. That is wasted.
パワープラスダメージチェックターンエンド俺のターンドローこのカードを受け切れるかライドゴールゴールヴァンガードにアタックだ
And he is having trouble building a field, so he's only going to get 3 attacks this turn. And one of them can't even hit.
ノーガード
Shelling Cannon can't do anything because I'm not at grade 3 yet. So we will let that one
ノ
through.
ーガードダメージチェックフロントトリガ
And we get a front
ー
trigger.
パワープラスヴァンガードにアタックだこのスキルで戦況は俺に傾くぜ
So all he's going to get off of Flagberg's skill is a draw. So let's see. He needs a trigger for that to even hit. But he does have Twin Drive. But you know what? I think I'm going to risk it anyway.
ノーガードドライブチェックドライブチェックドロートリガー
And he gets a draw trigger.
パワープラス
Alright, that'd just be 1 damage.
久々のこの感覚アタックだダメージチェックターンエンドスタンドアンドドロー
Alright, so let's discard one of these crits
俺の切り札だライド
to ride Eugene.
スキル発動
And then Randor's skill lets us draw. And we can put one from our drop into our soul. And it doesn't really matter which one we put. So let's see, we'll go ahead and play Best Harvest.
オーダー発動
So then Eugene will gain the draw skill. So then we'll call Meteor Flare
コール
and use his ability to Canner Blast and retire his Inroad Shooter. So then Eugene will let us draw. And let's see, I am going to call Gaze Forts and let's see, I guess I'll plop down that crit
コール
and then we'll rest both of them with Eugene's skill
発動
to take out his Shelling Cannon.
パワープラス
So then Eugene's skill lets us draw again. And gaze forward skill restands himself
パワー
and
プラ
gives
ス
him plus 2k. So I think I'll go ahead and use Eugene's Soul Blast ability to Soul Blast 5.
これで勝ちだなスキル発動
And we will check the top 4 and Superior Call. So we'll call Travis and Andrea.
スペリオルコール
So let's see, we'll use Andrea's skill
スキル発動
to retire herself and take out his last rear guard. So then I'll get to draw again.
発動
And Meteor Flare gains 10k since he has no rear guards. So we will call Oswald from our hand.
コール
And I believe we are good. So we will attack with the Vanguard first.
ヴァンガードにアタックノーガードだドライブチェックドライブチェックここが勝負どころだ行くぞダメージチェック
So then we can use Oswald's skill to counter blast and discard 1. So let's see, we'll drop drop that Meteor Flare, I guess,
スキル発動
to restand Eugene and attack once again.
にアタック
And he perfect guards.
ほらスキル発動完全カードだドライブチェックだよしクリティカルトリガーだ
And we get a crit trigger. So we'll give both those effects to Travis.
プラスパワープラス
So then we'll attack with
ヴ
Travis.
ァンガードにアタック
And he guards.
ガードだ
And then we'll attack with Meteor Flare. And she'll probably just let through.
ノーガード
Yeah, he does.
ダメージチェック
So that put him to 5.
ターンエンドスタンド&ドローペルソナライド
And he does get his Persona Ride.
コールコールコール
And he is going to get his 5 attacks this turn, so he will be at full strength. So we will guard this one.
ガードだスキル発動ヤガードにアタック
And we'll let that through.
ノーガードスキル発動ヴァンガードにアタック
And we'll guard that with that front.
ガードだヴァンガードへアタックだ
And let's see, we will guard that one too. His Vanguard's gonna have guard restrict, so we'll let it through. We won't have to deal with that.
ヴァンガードにアタックこのスキルで戦況は俺に傾くぜ
So we took out 2 of our rear guards,
スキル発動
and then Prize Trident will let him countercharge. So we're gonna let that one through.
ノーガードだドライブチェックヒールトリガー
He gets a heal trigger, which he does get.
パワープラスドライブチェック俺のアタック受けてみなダメージチェック ここだスキル発動俺のターンだドロー
Alright, so now we can persona ride.
ペルソナライド
And let's see, we will... He's only got one rear guard, so if I play Best Harvest, I'm actually only going to get one draw out of that. So, that's probably not actually even worth it. So, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to call Brachio. And then we will use Eugene's ability to rest these two. And take out his one rear guard. And Gaze Fork will stand right back up. So then we'll call Oswald and Andrea. And I think we are good with that. So, start of the battle phase, give Brachio skill, restands himself, and gives him 5k. So then we will attack with Eugene first.
Vanguard
Any perfect guards.
完全カードだドライブチェックだドライブチェックだヒールトリガー
And we get a heal trigger, which we do get. So we will heal, and we will give that power to... we'll give it to Andrea.
Power plus.
So then Oswald skill lets us counter blast and discard. So I think I'm actually going to discard that order to restand Eugene and attack once again. And he guards, but he had to use up 3 cards. Alright, so then we can attack with Andrea. He lets that one through. He gets a crit trigger. So then we'll attack with Brachio. Oh, and he's got to let it through. And that crit does not help him, so we got him with that one. Alright. So there you go. That was my Eugene deck. Like I said, I did end up liking this deck a lot more than I expected to. So I am really glad I ended up building it. But anyway, I will be back soon with more deck profiles. Next up, I have my Hexa Orb deck. So until then, I guess that's all for this video. So lots of luck to you and yours.